This is the second video on interpreting quadratic functions. Again, I'm going to be using these 5 functions to answer questions, and if you haven't them drawn yet, it would be a good idea to do that first before you begin to watch the rest of the video. So if you need to, pause now, draw these functions, and then play again. If you watched the first video on interpreting quadratic functions and you've already drawn these graphs, well then go back and find them and you can use them to follow along with the video. First thing that I want to look at in this video is evaluating a function using a graph. So what I mean by this is finding the output or the solution for an f of x. Now I say f of x here, but I've called my functions all different things, f of x and g of x and h of x and so on. So I'll be looking for the output for each of those, again using the graph. So let's start off with our f of x function. So here's the graph of it already drawn. And what I want to do here is find f of 3. Now we know that normally we'd write down f of x. So the value in the bracket must be an x value. So I'll go to this value on the x-axis. So here I've marked 3 on the x-axis. Now I'll use my ruler to draw a line down from 3 until I meet the curve. When I've done that, and I've identified where the line and the curve meet, so just here, I'll then draw a horizontal line to the y-axis. The number that I land on here is my solution. So in this case, my solution is -3. Next we have the function g of x. This time I want to find g of 2. Again, don't forget, anytime I've got a number inside in the bracket, that's the x value. So I go to that value on the x-axis. Here I've marked 2. I'll draw a vertical line through it until I meet the graph. I'll identify where that line and the graph meet, and then I'll draw a horizontal line to the y-axis. The value that I landed on the y-axis is my solution, and in this case it's 4. Here I have the h function. I'm being asked to find h of 2.5. I go to 2.5 on the x-axis, I draw a vertical line through it, I identify where that line and the curve meet, and then I draw a horizontal line to the y-axis. In this case my solution is 7. Here's the j function. We're being asked to find j of -2. Whatever value is in the bracket is an x value. I go to that x value, -2. I draw a vertical line through it until I hit the graph. I see where the line and the graph meet, and I go to the y-axis. In this case, my solution is -2. And finally, I have my k of x function. I want to find k of 2.5. I go to 2.5 on the x-axis. I can mark that point. I draw a vertical line through this until it meets the curve. I identify where the line and the curve meet, and I draw a line to the y-axis. This time my answer is about -6.5. Again, read off your answers as accurately as you can for your own diagram. So to summarise, if you're asked to evaluate f of 3 or g of 2, or whenever there's a number inside in this bracket, then you always go to that value on the x-axis, draw a vertical line, meet the curve, go to the y-axis. The y-axis number is your answer. So they're giving you an x number and they want you to give a y number as an answer. On the other hand, sometimes you can be asked to solve for x when you're given f of x. So in these following examples, we'll be given a y value and we'll be looking for an x value. So you'll notice first of all in the question here that I'm being asked to find the values of x. Keep an eye for clues like this in the questions. It shows me clearly that I want to have more than one answer for x. And since they want to know x, they must be giving me a y value. So whenever I'm given f of x equals or g of x equals and so on, this is an instruction to go to this value on the y-axis. So in this case, I go to 5 on the y-axis. I draw a horizontal line through this value on the y-axis and make sure to go right across in both directions, because the likelihood is that you won't just hit the quadratic once, you should hit it twice. And I can see that we meet the quadratic curve at this point and also at this point. So at both of those points then I must drop a line down to the x-axis. And the numbers that I land at on the x-axis are my 2 solutions. So in this case, -1 and 5. Next we have g of x. I want to find the values of x when g of x equals -1. Remember, the -1 is a value on the y-axis. So I go to that value and I draw a line right through it. And again, I can see that my line goes through the curve in 2 places. I'll draw a line from both of these points straight up vertically to the x-axis, and I'll read those values as accurately as possible. And for my graph, those values look like -1.6 and 0.5. So those are my solutions. Here I have h of x. I want to find the values of x when h of x equals 4. So what should I do? I should go to 4 on the y-axis, and then a horizontal line through that number. I'll meet the curve in 2 places, and I'll draw vertical lines to the x-axis. Again, read your solutions as accurately as possible. In this case, I'm estimating -1.7 and 2.2. Here's my j of x graph. I want to find the values of x when j of x equals to 5. Again, don't forget I go to the y-axis and I mark 5, and then I draw a horizontal line through it, and then I drop down to the x-axis. In this case, my answers look like they are -3 and 1.5. And finally, we have kx. We want to solve for the values of x when kx equals to -3. So what do? We'll mark -3 on the y-axis. We'll draw a horizontal line through it, and then vertical lines through those points of intersection to the x-axis. And in this case, my solutions are approximately -1.4 and x equals 2. So remember from this video, when they give you x values, you want to get y values as your answers. And if they give you y values, you want to get x values as your answers.